Alex, I recently read that 7 million American men aged 25 to 54 are not working, and it's on purpose. It's not because they were laid off or fired. They're choosing not to work. And I study this every day because I'm focused on the world of work, helping people do work they love, and then cover it from all angles. And so there's been economists are just scratching their head for the last 2 years coming out of the pandemic as we've seen the jobs gap, right? Where you had, right now I think it's about 10.3 million jobs available, posted jobs, and then a little bit over 8 million unemployed, and that's down from 11. So we had this huge job gap. Well, now we're starting to see what's going on. 7 million men in America, all right, are choosing not to work. Now, you're a numbers guy, so we look at this and we go, okay, some of these they've done well, right? Maybe in their 40s or 50s and they're cashed out. They're doing it. And you got some are living in their basement with mom and dad, right? Some are falling on hard times. I mean, there's a big group of people here, so I don't want to be too general, but at the same time, I don't mind telling you, I think this is a crisis. I think it's a crisis. I think it's a soul level crisis for the majority of those 7 million. Does that concern you when you hear that? Do you have thoughts on why you think that is? The way we look at work, the way that you and I both believe that we were created to contribute through our work. I believe that. Thoughts on that number? Because I was honestly, I gasped. And who uses that word anymore? For all you young people, that's GASPED. It's an old term, right? I emotionally was just like, whoa, 7 million dudes. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think I would love to know the psychographics of the 7 million. So, I mean, sure, there's the retired folks, who cashed out, whatever.
Right.
And then I think there's probably a subcamp. Now, are these people getting unemployment or are they just getting nothing?
No, they're not getting unemployment. They are just not in the system at all. They're just like happily not working, or I don't know if I could use that phrase. I don't think that's true.
So that brings up, I would imagine, two camps. So one, because they're being supported somehow.
That's right.
So they're either being supported, if it's not through government, then they're being supported by family or a spouse.
That's right.
In the other camp, you've got people who are being supported by, I would say, I'll say you've got the spouse supported ones, and then you've got the family supported ones who don't.
That's exactly right.
So if you were to look at those two things, I actually think that despite the fact that the stay-at-home dad with the breadwinning mom has a use case, and then the other, and the basement mom, mom's basement kid, and I'm probably gonna get a lot of flack for this. Caleb's like, I might get a lot of flack for this. But I actually think it has stems all the way down to masculinity in general and how it's being redefined. And this is, again, I'm not the big labeler of good or bad. I'm just kind of saying what I observe is that I think being a man and working and providing 30 years ago, 50 years ago, were inextricably linked. Being a man and providing for your family were one and the same.
That's right.
One was a requisite for the other. You cannot call yourself a man if you do not provide for your family. That narrative has shifted. And so I think that in the spouse, the wife works, dad stays at home. There are arguments for that. I'm very conservative when it comes to how I like to live my life with my wife, et cetera. I don't imagine a world where I would not be the provider ever. It's just, and again, I was raised with very conservative Middle Eastern values. So that's innate to my DNA, good or bad, who knows? But I think men, based on my experience, men are built to work. That's that.
That's right.
On the other side with mom's basement, right? I think that there's an entire subset of men who feel completely hopeless and disheartened and feel like the system is out to get them. Now, there's the other side of the aisle that says, if you're a man, you're born with all of these privileges and blah, 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 blah. We can say whatever we want. In my opinion, human suffering feels the same if you were the one suffering.
That's right.
And so a 10 out of 10 pain for one person from being beat up by their dad versus a 10 out of 10 pain for being sexually abused by an uncle. I'm just getting real here. 10 out of 10 still feels like 10 out of 10. Now, we could make an argument that maybe just being physically abused, getting beat up versus being sexually abused, you'd rather be physically abused if you had the pick, right?
Right.
But I think in terms of how humans experience reality, pain is pain. And so we like to objectify things and quantify them. But I think that for that subset, they still feel like they're being told all the time that they have these advantages and yet aren't succeeding. And so it's easier for the ego to say, I'm not going to try because at least now I'm not failing.
That's exactly right.
And so I think a lot of people have opted out because the pain of failure is too great for them. And because they feel like the chips are stacked against them and they feel their self-esteem is rock bottom because they can't keep promises to themselves. Right. And so they continue to perpetuate that. And I do think it's a massive problem. And I think that, again, as contrarian as this is, I think guys, especially younger guys, need a lot of help. And I think there's a lot of anger.
They do.
And I think that like the proliferation of like Andrew Tate and some of those types of characters, I think that what they did was they gave a voice to some of that disenfranchised group. It wasn't like eliminating Tate doesn't eliminate the root, which is that a lot of men feel emasculated. They feel disrespected. Yep. And to be fair, they are not worthy of respect because they have not done anything respectable. And so it's a bit of a chicken and the egg problem, but like someone needs to start the flame to say like, if you want the respect, you have to do the stuff that gets you it. As much as we could say, I wish the world gave unconditional love, I wish the world gave unconditional respect, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. And so rather than lamenting the way the world is, we can see it for what it is and then play within those boundaries.
I think you and I are probably both big on personal responsibility, right? So I don't want to in any way confuse, but I want to address what you said, Alex, because I think you're right. But I think a lot of the problem lies on the first and second floor, not the kid, not the grown-up kid in the basement on his screens getting the dopamine. And I think what's happened is that we have bubble wrapped our kids to the point where the fear of failure is actually way worse than the failure itself.
We have this. So there was a little study that said that it takes about 20 hours to become. You get the most amount of gains in a new skill in the first 20 hours. Mm-hmm. Like if learning it, you want to learn the guitar, you want to learn to sing, you want to learn a cold call, first 20 hours, you get by percentage of skill acquisition, you get the most in that first 20. The problem is that people will wait years to start the first hour.
That's correct.
Because they're so afraid of the pain of not being good enough because they expect for everything to be easy. And I think it circles back to what we said at the very beginning.
That's it. I mean, and that to me is the crisis. And certainly you addressed a lot of issues. It's not all one thing, but my goodness, I think it's not popular to say what you said anymore. I'm glad you said it, but there is inherently in a man a craving. Men and women are different, and I don't think that's controversial to say. But there's a craving. Yeah. There's a craving in a man to go do something, and so we're seeing a lot of this now. Where they've never been pushed, they've never been challenged to do anything, and it's a big, scary world out there.
And so I study a lot of human behavior stuff because I think it's really interesting, for motivating workforces, persuading, et cetera. And so I have the belief that all humans are addicted. Everyone's addicted. And the question is, what are we addicted to? And so like I am addicted to the dopamine rush that I get or the serotonin, whatever, from lots of grit and then payoff, right? So I know, I understand that cycle well. And so I like to play it as many times as I can. I think that with some of this 7 million that you're talking about, they also have an addiction, but they got addicted to something that was not pro-social or was not pro-work. And so to your point about the video games in the basement, they are addicted to that. And they do get dopamine. They do get their dopamine in a way that is superior to anything that happens in the real world. And it's being enabled by the parents that continue to subsidize that addiction.